We're going to, Keith is first going to talk a little bit about Dynamo View extensions, which you've already heard about from Andreas and a couple other moments over the past 24 hours. And then I'll talk a little bit about what's coming in the future, the near future of Dynamo and the Forge platform.
So hey guys, my name is Keith ALFARO. I'm a developer with the Dynamo team. Today we're going to talk about View extensions, which we premiered for the first time in London for the most part. And since then, we've been quietly kind of working on the back end towards a few new things before we really make more of a push for people to start using these new tools and functionality. So if you're familiar with developing on Dynamo, there's various third-party development tools that you could be using. And with each of these tools, there comes various levels of difficulty, and with that difficulty, usually more power in what you can do and how you can interact with Dynamo itself. So here, like a beginning user is for the most part just using out-of-the-box nodes in a graph. Then if you want to start clustering those nodes, you get into custom nodes, and then from there we're going up to zero touch, which becomes C# development. To get more complex, we have UI nodes where you start to see like different interactions with buttons and fields and drop downs. And we're going to talk about right between those two is extensions. So it's a little bit easier to work with extensions if you're not quite as experienced of a C# developer. So currently we have a bunch of examples, some that you may or may not be aware of that have been around a while. So for example, the Dynamo Package Manager is a View extension. We have some samples in our sample repo, which I'm going to point you guys out later if you want to mess around with any of those. We're building some in-house examples, so Mike's going to talk in a little bit about Refinery and what exactly that does and how it connects to Dynamo. You've already seen Speckle. John Pearson's at Parallax built a pretty cool align tool, and I think it makes a really good point because you don't have to build a complex extension or application. It could be a widget or a small tool that just accomplishes a single task that you're constantly doing throughout your workflow. Mark Thorley had favorite nodes, and then I'm glad Andreas showed a little bit of what he's working on because I saw a Twitter post last night and I took a screenshot of that. So, and then one that we worked on over Recharge internally, which is a Dynamo Viewer, like a little pop-out window that people could use for customizing the view a little bit. So here's a screenshot just of some of those early examples of what people are starting to work on and some of the functionality that they're starting to expose. The viewport, alignment of nodes, Speckle, Andreas's work, favorite nodes by Mark Thorley. Just really quickly, we're going to talk about when you might want to use an extension versus creating a node library. So the biggest advantage is that you gain a lot more control over the graph. You can start to automate behavior that you were manually doing in the Dynamo environment. You can modify a lot of the UI. You can start to override different things. So yeah, you can basically replace some of the core functionality if you don't like the way that something works. And like I said earlier, it's a bit simpler than some of the more complex node development options we have. Let's see. So I kind of went into this a little bit, but yeah, you get a reference to the workspace, the view. You can execute commands externally from outside of the application. So this little picture on the bottom is just showing that if you have another application running and you want to establish a communication between those two, you have the ability to pass data back and forth in both directions. And as of 48 hours ago, pretty much right after we arrived here, we worked on getting package support for View extensions. So now it's easier to share. Just like a normal package, you're able to push your extension up. Users can pull that down without having to have a separate installer. If you're interested in testing some of this out, like I mentioned, our sample repo includes a View extension and a regular extension, which can be found at this GitHub link. And it's actually also live on the package manager if you just want to play around or if you want to hack on it. These are just some of the resources. There's some links to the content that was mentioned from the London View extension workshop. And I was just going to show really quickly a quick example of an extension. So this was that viewer that I was talking about that I was fooling around with. So the goal here was just to be able to capture more design intent to be able to customize things outside of what Dynamo traditionally is giving you. So if I want the background of my viewer to be a different color, I want to start to play with animation-related things. You have access to all this type of stuff. Screenshots. I think things that like users are really interested that sometimes get overlooked. Simple tools that help architects and designers to capture that design intent.
Thanks, Keith. Those videos up on the. Yeah, so Keith mentioned the refinery view extension as one of the first extensions that we've been developing as a functionality expansion for Dynamo in-house. And refinery is an optimization tool. It's distinct from things like DynaShape, which we just saw, and the work that MX3D is doing in terms of geometric optimization or topology optimization. Refinery's goals are different. It's more about optimization for solving arbitrary problems that maybe aren't even geometrical. Maybe they're schedule-based or just doing some patterning optimization or literally anything you can make a Dynamo graph for. We want to be able to do goal-driven searching through the design space. This work grew out of Project Fractal, which you might be familiar with, which is an optioneering tool to just rapidly iterate through the design space without necessarily having a goal in mind. So I'm going to show the crane optimization video. So this is a video from Mohammed Asl on our team. He's attempting to solve the problem of how do you position cranes on a work site to minimize both the time it takes to build everything, but also the reach of the cranes. And there's a certain amount of opposition to those two goals. First, we have a Dynamo graph that has input variables at the very beginning on the left to control the X and Y position of the two cranes. Pretty simple input model. And then on the right end of the graph, we have the output scores of the time to construct and the total reach of each of the cranes. So we're going to use this refinery view extension to send a job to our computation engine and start using genetic algorithm optimization to find the Pareto front, the curve of sort of maximum balance between those two goals. You have a few different options for visualizing different variables. Here we're seeing on the X and Y axis the two output goals, and you can sort of see the implied curve of the optimal trade-off between those two goals. So this is something that's it can use local computation, but would also connect this to cloud computation, so you can do thousands of evaluations of massively complex graphs in a reasonable amount of time. We're not there yet; it's still pretty slow. We have a lot of work to do still on it. But if this is the kind of thing you're interested in and you want to maybe get in our beta program, come find me afterwards. We're happy to talk more about the possibilities and what's going on here. Another thing that we've been working on, and I wanted to talk about this because a really interesting thing happened last night. Multiple teams, when we were going around asking what they're working on and how we could help, they started talking about we're using some other visual programming environment, or we have this other tool, and it's okay. You can say Grasshopper. We're not afraid of it. At Autodesk, we absolutely understand that people have the tools that they use that aren't from Autodesk, and it's our job to make your workflow effective and efficient, no matter what tools you're using. All the possibilities in the Forge platform to connect tools that that are ours with connect tools that aren't ours. It's all one big happy family. That's pushing a little bit too far, but just to show we're serious about this, this is a video using some things we've been working on to connect Dynamo and Grasshopper directly in a sort of live collaboration session. If you've heard anything in the past about Project Quantum or sort of connected workflows on Forge, this is sort of the direction we're going in. I don't want to make any forward-looking statements and say when what exactly we're going to deliver when, but this is what we're thinking about. This is what we're working on right now. We think that the interoperability of all tools to enable your specific workflow is what we want to achieve. So any questions about that? I can happy to talk about that all weekend. Anything to add? right. Thank you very much.